The storm on Nerox IV was fierce and unrelenting, howling across the barren landscape with gusts strong enough to tear apart metal and stone. The planet was a desolate, war-torn world where life barely clung to survival. The once pristine blue skies were now permanently choked with smoke, a grim reminder of the brutal conflict that had torn the planet apart. For the last few decades, factions of different species had waged endless battles over the resources of Nerox IV, each faction more vicious than the last. In the chaos, entire cities had been razed, populations wiped out, and hope seemed like a distant memory. Among the wreckage of a once bustling human colony, a young girl lay unconscious, bruised and bloodied, her small body half buried in the dirt. Her name was Maya, a 13-year-old survivor of an attack by the Krelk, a violent alien species bent on conquering human colonies. She had been caught in the crossfire during a raid, left abandoned and dying in the wreckage of her home, with no one to save her. Maya's memories were a blur. She remembered the shrill alarms blaring, her mother screaming for her to hide, and then the violent explosions that sent debris flying in every direction. The last thing she remembered before she lost consciousness was a searing pain in her side. The pain had been too much to bear, and then everything went black. When Maya opened her eyes, the storm had subsided, and she found herself lying in a makeshift shelter, a crude hut hidden beneath the ruins of a collapsed building. The air was still thick with dust, and the faint smell of burnt wood and metal lingered in the atmosphere. She tried to sit up, but her body screamed in protest. Her side throbbed, and she winced as her hand instinctively touched the wound. Blood had soaked through her ragged clothes, and her skin felt cold and clammy. Who saved me?" she whispered to herself, but the answer came as a whisper on the wind. She barely had time to gather her thoughts when she heard footsteps approaching from the shadows. Fear gripped her chest. Was it the Krelk? Was she about to be captured, dragged back into the nightmare of war? She scrambled backward, but before she could make a sound, a figure stepped into the dim light of the hut. The figure was tall, humanoid, but not quite human, covered in sleek, metallic armor with glowing lines running through it. The figure's helmet was featureless, save for a faint red glow where the eyes should have been. It was the last thing Maya expected to see, a being she had only ever heard of in stories. It was one of the Exodians, an ancient race of warriors who had mysteriously disappeared after a series of galaxy-wide catastrophes. The Exodians were rumored to be both powerful and enigmatic, a race that had once been protectors of the galaxy, but had vanished without a trace after a war with an enemy no one seemed to remember. Their power, advanced technology, and seemingly benevolent nature had made them the stuff of legend. But no one had seen one in centuries. Maya's breath caught in her throat. "Who are you?" she gasped, her voice barely more than a whisper. The figure didn't respond immediately. Instead, it kneeled beside her, placing a cool hand on her forehead, and Maya could feel a strange energy emanating from the touch. It was like nothing she had ever experienced, calming, healing, yet foreign and alien in its intensity. After a long moment, the figure spoke, its voice modulated and metallic, but strangely soothing. "You were left behind," it said. "I found you." Maya blinked in confusion, still unable to fully comprehend what was happening. She had never seen an Exodian in person. No one had for hundreds of years. How could one have found her in the middle of a war zone? How is she still alive? "Who are you?" she asked again, her voice steadier this time. She didn't feel fear now, just a strange sense of curiosity. The Exodian tilted its head slightly, as if considering how to answer her question. "I am an exile," it finally said, "a remnant of the old guard. My people are gone, but I remain. I protect those who are abandoned, those who are forgotten." Maya was speechless, struggling to make sense of this surreal encounter. Her eyes glanced down at the armor of the Exodian, noting the intricate symbols etched into the surface, symbols she had never seen before. The Exodian's presence seemed both reassuring and alien, like an echo of something greater that she couldn't quite grasp. "You saved me?" Maya asked, her voice small. "I did," the Exodian replied. "But I cannot stay long. The war, it is not over. You must be strong, Maya. The fate of this world, of your people, is still in your hands." The Exodian's words felt like a heavy weight pressing down on her chest. The fate of her people? What could a 13-year-old girl do to change anything? She had lost everything: her family, her home, her entire world. What could she possibly do to stop the endless fighting? "I don't understand," she murmured, her voice shaky. The Exodian placed a hand on her shoulder, and Maya felt a strange surge of warmth and energy. "You do not have to understand now, but you will in time. You are the key to ending this war, Maya. You must survive. You must find others. You must unite the scattered remnants of humanity." With those words, the Exodian slowly stood, its armored form towering over her. "There is much to do, and much yet to be done. Be strong, human girl. You will change the fate of this galaxy. Do not let your fear blind you." And just as suddenly as the Exodian had arrived, it turned and walked out into the storm, disappearing into the night. Maya lay there in stunned silence, the words of the mysterious warrior echoing in her mind. Days passed, and Maya's wounds slowly healed. With the Exodian's help, she had enough strength to move again, and a small part of her began to believe that perhaps there was hope after all. She left the shelter and began to explore the ruins of her once thriving city. The world was a wasteland now, but in the distance, she saw flashes of light. Other survivors, other souls who had been abandoned, just like her. Maya didn't know how, and she didn't know why, but the Exodian had given her something no one else had: hope. The future was still uncertain, but she would not let the war define her. The Exodian had spoken of a greater purpose, and she felt it deep inside her, like a spark of something big, something world-changing. The galaxy was waiting, and Maya, the human girl who had been left behind, was ready to change it.